I really love to look at the semantics of words and to look into what their meaning is exactly. And there's quite a few words we use within sexuality that I find important. Words like virginity, words like chastity. But let me start with an interesting concept. As a person of faith, I believe that there is a Creator God who created us and created us to be intimate and to be in relationship and created us to be sexual, and that we will have attractions and arousal and desire. And so I like the idea of God has a sexual economy, a sexual economy. Now, so often, gang, when we look at economy, we think about words that deal with finance, I think. But actually, if we look back at the ancient Greek, the word economy comes from two different words. Econo comes from the word oikos, which is the idea of a house or a household. And then nomos is the Greek word for law or for rules or for guidelines. And so when I look at God's sexual economy, I look to the idea that the Creator, the Almighty, put in place guidelines for His household, for His people, for His children, guidelines that will help put guardrails, will help us think through our sexuality, to let it bring us the contentment that we really would like it to bring. So I think the word virgin gets a bad rap sometimes, because when you look at, if you're trying to semantically define, if we're trying to define virgin, in the Old Testament, in Scripture, it talks about virgin being something that separates, that hides, that's set apart, something that's very valuable, that sets aside their sexuality as being very valuable. So to me, when I look at virginity, like virgin olive oil, virgin wool, we're looking at something that's pure, something that's uncontaminated. We're also looking purposefully at something that isn't experienced. And if I look at the word chastity and try to define it, it is the idea of abstinence. But listen, to me, when I try to look at the meaning, the definition of chastity, part of it is choosing wise constraints, choosing to boundary something that is important. And so if we're trying to think through, rather than, the 40-year-old virgin, and in our culture, virginity or chastity really is looked down upon as being something that isn't very mature, that's something that isn't very wise, it's something that's totally inexperienced, something that you're missing if you haven't had sexual intercourse, you hadn't had sex with someone, especially in our hookup culture. I would like us to rethink some of these words carefully and to realize that God does have a sexual economy, that He has household guidelines that are put in place actually to help us live more fully and with more joy, more freedom than if we don't have the guidelines. Sometimes I like to call them guardrails, that there's rails, there's guidelines. Almost like if you went to the Grand Canyon, you would see that they had guardrails so that you didn't slip over the canyon, into the canyon and fall down and really hurt yourself or even kill yourself. I think that's what God's household guidelines are about, is giving us within our sexuality. And He says, I would like you to allow full, true intercourse, sexuality to be within marriage. And I would like you to be chaste. I would like you to be a virgin. But could we rethink those words? Could we think of it maybe from God's ideas a little bit more? That part of what He's looking at with virginity is, I would like to keep contamination out. I would like to keep you with guardrails, with a fence, not because the other grass is greener, because I want you to grow a garden. And if you have wise constraints, chastity, if you have wise constraints, I think you'll reach your goals of sexual fulfillment, goals of really sexual freedom and enjoyment, much, much more if you choose to follow my sexual guidelines.